5 years from now, you're either the person who looks back and says, wow, I can't believe how far I've come, or the person who looks back and says, wow, I'm in the same position I was in 5 years ago. And the difference between those two people, it's not a lottery ticket, it's not a secret trust fund, and it's definitely not that motivational speech you saved on Instagram and never watched. It's one choice, a choice so unsexy that most people scroll right past it. This choice, however, decides whether you spend the next 5 years hoping for a spark or build a damn bonfire. Welcome to the end of the line, because today we're getting off the hamster wheel. You see, for years, I was a motivation junkie. I'd watch a video, get hyped up at 2 a.m., create a plan to reinvent my entire existence, but then wake up only to do the same things again. But we're not alone. 92% of people never actually achieve their long-term goals. But why is that? Because we wait to feel like it. And that's the trap. That's the lie we're all sold, that you need to feel inspired before you can act. But what if I told you that relying on that feeling is scientifically guaranteed to fail? And I'm not only talking about the overused dopamine effect and brain chemistry, but also a well-documented psychological phenomenon. And I have the research to back it up. Scientists call it ego depletion. The theory, pioneered by social psychologist Roy Baumeister, states that your willpower isn't some infinite wellspring of inspiration. It's a finite resource, like a muscle. Every time you force yourself to do something, resist a temptation, or make a hard choice, you're fatiguing that muscle, making it weaker for the next task. The most famous demonstration of this is a brilliant study from 1998. Researchers brought hungry students into a lab that smelled of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. One group was allowed to eat the cookies. A second group was forced to resist the cookies and eat radishes instead. Afterward, both groups were given a difficult and secretly unsolvable puzzle to see how long they would persist. The results were stunning. The students who got to eat the cookies worked on the puzzle for an average of 19 minutes. But the radish eaters, the ones who had to exhaust their self-control staring at cookies they couldn't have, they gave up in just 8 minutes. They had burned through their limited supply of willpower just by saying no to a cookie. This extends beyond just cookies. Every choice you make, from what to wear to what to focus on, drains this same battery, a process called decision fatigue. So when I was up at 2 a.m., making 100 decisions about my new life, I was draining my battery to zero. By morning, I had no mental energy left to actually do any of it. The most successful, consistent, and fulfilled people on this planet aren't running on feelings. They're running on a 3-phase system. Phase 1, the revelation. Look, a pilot flying a 747 through a storm doesn't rely on feeling like flying. A surgeon doesn't walk into a 12-hour operation hoping for a burst of inspiration, or at least I hope not. They rely on checklists, on protocols, on systems. And this isn't just a nice analogy. It's a life or death strategy backed by hard data. The World Health Organization developed a simple surgical safety checklist to be used before, during, and after operations. And don't think they did it for beginners. It was designed as a cognitive safety net for expert surgeons to prevent simple human errors under pressure, which we all make. But what were the results? A landmark study evaluated its use across 8 hospitals worldwide. The implementation of this simple system was shown to reduce patient mortality by as much as 47%. Let me say that again. A simple checklist nearly cut deaths in half. This is evidence that systems are not for the unskilled, but are safety nets for everyone managing complexity and mitigating inevitable human error. Now you know something pilots and surgeons had to pay $200,000 or more in tuition to learn. So, if you appreciate the effort I put into this video, show your support by hitting that like and subscribe button. It helps our small channel a lot. Back to the video. Motivation is a fair weather friend. It shows up when things are exciting and new, but it vanishes the second things get boring, difficult, or repetitive. And guess what? All meaningful goals have boring, difficult, and repetitive parts. But a system is what sets people apart. It's your co-pilot that guides you when you're tired or distracted, making the right choice the easiest choice. Now, I know what you're thinking. Systems. Seriously, that sounds boring. And you're right, it is. Systems don't give you that jolt of dopamine, like a fresh vision board or a new productivity app. There's no epic movie for setting your gym clothes out the night before. No one glorifies putting their phone in another room to focus. But that's where many of us go wrong. We ignore systems because they aren't sexy. We want the lightning strike, not the tedious work of installing a lightning rod. But here's the single most important truth I can possibly give you. The one that, if you truly get it, changes everything. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Phase 2, the architect method. So, how do we stop being motivation junkies and start becoming architects of our own lives? Well, first thing is to stop chasing unrealistic goals, like transforming our life in one day. It's about making a few tiny strategic changes. We're going to call it the architect method. It's a 4-step blueprint to build a life where progress is the default setting. Step 1, the blueprint. Your feelings are the worst project managers in the world. They're moody, unreliable, and they'll convince you that doom scrolling is a form of market research. So you need to fire them, but how? Science tells us to move from vague goal intention to a specific implementation intention. I know, the first time I heard that word, I was confused too. But the research behind it is incredible. A goal intention is just saying what you want. I want to work on my project. On the other hand, an implementation intention is a concrete plan that specifies the when and where, creating an if-then statement. If it is Wednesday at 9 a.m., then I will write 500 words of Chapter 1. And yes, I have research to back this up. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer conducted a study where he asked students to do a difficult task, write a report over the Christmas holidays. Half the students were just given the goal. The other half were asked to form a specific implementation intention, deciding exactly when and where they would write it. The results? Only 32% of the students with the vague goal got it done. But of the students who made a specific if-then plan, 71% of them completed the report. They more than doubled their rate of success, not by increasing their motivation, but by simply making a specific plan. When you put something on a calendar, not a to-do list, a calendar, it's no longer a negotiation. It's an appointment. You don't negotiate with your boss at 8:55 a.m. whether you'll go to work today. You just go. An implementation intention gives control to the situation itself, making the action automatic, not dependent on your emotion. Treat your own promises with that same respect, and you'll notice you're finally standing behind your words.
Step 2, design your environment. Right now, I bet your phone, with its infinite amount of distractions, is within arm's reach. There's junk food a few steps away. But the book you say you want to read is under a pile of mail. We need to reverse that. And the science on this is so powerful, it won a Nobel Prize. It's called choice architecture. The idea is that the choices in front of us dramatically influence our decisions, and anyone who designs our environment becomes the choice architect. A massive 2021 research analysis looked at over 200 studies and found that while many nudges work, the single most powerful type of intervention is changing the physical structure of the environment. Changing the space around you is much more powerful than any reminder or piece of information. But why is this so? Because of activation energy. Just like a chemical reaction, every habit requires a certain amount of energy to get started. Your goal as an architect is to lower the activation energy for good habits and raise it for bad ones. Want to work out in the morning? Make it easy by laying out your gym clothes, filling up your water bottle, and leaving your keys by the door. By doing this, you've lowered the activation energy so much that you'd have to actively undo your own preparation to fail. Want to focus? The single greatest system I ever used was this. When I work, my phone goes into another room, not on silent, not face down, but in another room. The activation energy required to get up, walk to the other room, and check Instagram becomes higher than the activation energy to just write one more sentence. Step 3. Lower the damn barrier. Sometimes even with the perfect environment, starting feels like pushing a car uphill. This is where a system meets some of the most brilliant ideas in behavioral science. One tool is called the 2-minute rule, popularized by author James Clear. Whatever your goal is, shrink it down to something that takes less than 2 minutes. Read 30 pages a day becomes read 1 page. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes and step outside. Meditate for 20 minutes becomes sit on the cushion and take 1 deep breath. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous, but this isn't just a cute trick. It's a strategic attack on the psychology of procrastination. First, you're tackling the problem of scale. Psychologist Carl Weick discovered that when we frame problems as massive and overwhelming, it induces dysfunctional levels of stress that paralyze our ability to think and act. He found that the key to progress is to reframe huge challenges into a series of small wins. Making your first $1,000 is a small yet attainable goal, especially when you started at zero. Tangible pieces of progress like this lower stress and prove to your brain that the task is possible. But that's only half the magic. The second and perhaps most crucial part comes from the work of Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg. His research shows that habits are not wired into our brains through repetition alone. They are wired in when we feel successful. When you set the bar so low that you cannot fail, you are guaranteed to succeed. And that feeling of success, that tiny burst of "I did it," is the emotional reward that tells your brain, "Hey, that was good. Let's do that again." So do you see the journey? The 2-minute rule is the tactic that gets you to start. The small win is the psychological proof that you're making progress. And the feeling of success is the neurological glue that makes the habit stick. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. Step 4, the failure plan. Sorry to break it to you, but you will fail. And surprise! That's the beauty of life. You'll waste a morning on YouTube watching videos about building systems. A motivation-based person sees this failure as a catastrophe. And guess what? There's a name for that too. It's called the "what the hell" effect. Researchers Peter Herman and Janet Polivy first identified it in dieters. When someone on a strict diet eats one cookie, their all-or-nothing brain declares, "Well, I've ruined my diet for the day," which is immediately followed by, "What the hell? I might as well eat the whole box and start again Monday." One minor mistake can trigger a total abandonment of the goal. But an architect sees failure as data. A system isn't about being perfect. It's about getting back on track so fast the failure doesn't hurt you. Your system for failure is a pre-committed contingency plan, a simple rule that short-circuits the "what the hell" effect into what we now call the "never miss twice" effect. Ate junk food today? That's fine. Don't do it again. But tomorrow, we're back to the plan. Doing that with no guilt and drama makes the system work like a well-oiled machine. This one rule prevents a single crack from shattering the entire foundation. It reframes failure from a catastrophe into an acceptable, non-fatal event, automating your recovery. Phase 3, the identity shift. Do you see what's happening here? This isn't just about checklists and calendars. This is about an identity shift. And once again, this is grounded in proven psychology. Because who doesn't like science? Following your calendar instead of your mood is the equivalence of you voting for a disciplined and reliable version of you into control. And you cast an extra vote when you put your phone in another room. This is a direct application of self-perception theory, proposed by psychologist Daryl Bem. The theory states that we often figure out who we are and what we believe by observing our own behavior, just like an outsider would. If you consistently study, your brain starts to say, "I must be smart." You are what you repeatedly do. You're no longer a passenger in your own life, driven around by the whims of motivation. You are the architect who designs the environment, draws the blueprint, and decides the outcome before the day even begins. And these votes, these small actions, they don't just add up, they compound, according to the compound effect. Typically, progress is thought of as linear, but the math of consistency is exponential. If you get just 1% better each day, at the end of the year, you'll be over 37 times better. Let's do the math. Let's say designing your environment by putting your phone away buys you back 1 hour per day. That's over 365 hours in a year you just gave yourself. While the motivation junkies are on their couches scrolling for their next temporary hit of inspiration, you're in the background, quietly compounding wins they only dream about. Small hinges swing big doors. And this hinge, the one that swings open everything you say you want, is not some grand, heroic act of willpower. It's the system you designed today. You won't feel the change tomorrow, or even next week. But give it 90 days, and one day you'll look up from your work and realize something profound. You haven't thought about motivation in months. You didn't need it. You weren't hoping for progress anymore. Why? Because you're living it, and every time you look in the mirror, you see someone who gets things done. Not because they feel like it, but because that's just who they are now. Of course, you can always ignore this. You can close this video and go search for Epic Motivation 2025 and get a 10-minute high. You can keep waiting for that perfect mood, that perfect moment. You can let another year slip by while you watch other people build the life you keep wishing you had. The hard truth is this: time is coming for you either way. The next 5 years will pass whether you are an architect or a passenger. As a last piece of wisdom, if any of this has helped you, like and subscribe, because my aim is to grow a community that gets 1% better every day. Remember, the best time to start was yesterday. The next best time is now.